Pour présenter cet échange de haut niveau, il me fait grand plaisir d'inviter mon patron, professeur Rémi Quirion, scientifique en chef du Québec et grand ami du CSPC, à nous rejoindre sur scène.
Bonsoir à tous et à toutes, plusieurs collègues et amis dans la salle. C'est un plaisir d'être avec vous encore cette année. Félicitations pour les célébrations des 10 ans du CSPC et l'hommage qui a été rendu ce soir à Merdad est très, très mérité. Maintenant, le défi pour lui, c'est de s'assurer de faire encore mieux au cours des 10 prochaines années et d'avoir peut-être 2000 participants d'ici quelques années. Donc, ils m'ont demandé en quelques minutes de présenter les participants à la discussion de ce soir. Et je vais commencer par son Excellence, très honorable gouverneur général Julie Payette. Allow me to call her my friend, to call her Julie. Julie and I go a long way back. We have been working together on various working groups, various committees over the year. And she's one of my, what I call my sage. So I have a group of people that I meet a couple of times a year where we discuss about everything and nothing. So we free associate, but that's often extremely stimulating. A couple of years ago, we had one of this dinner in July in Montreal, and at the end of the dinner, Julie announced to me, she told me, well, it will be announced over the next few hours that I'll become the Governor General of Canada. My first reaction was, oh no, I'm losing you, but not. She's committed to the group, committed to us, and in terms of spokesperson about science in Canada, about the fun of doing science. Can we have anyone better than Julie Payette? I don't think so. So thank you very much for letting me do it. Next, Dr. Donna Strickland, University of Waterloo. Nobel Prize Laureate 2018, the third woman in the history of this prize to win Nobel Prize in Physics. The first one, Marie Curie. For me, when I was much younger, thinking about science, reading about science, of course, the Curie, and especially Marie Curie, an exceptional model. And now we have a winner here in Canada of the Nobel Prize in Physics. So that's great. As a role model, this is just amazing for the younger generation, but for all of us in Canada. Her discovery during the PhD thesis related to the laser technology. Probably in those days, nobody was dreaming that this eventually could apply to surgery. That's the beauty of basic science, that the necessity, absolute necessity of basic science, basic research. I just happened to have surgery a couple of weeks ago, laser will use, and thanks to you to have been involved with the discovery that made it all possible. So we have these two amazing women. And as the moderator, we have Janet. But before I come to Janet, my God, we have these two women probably we need a man to balance a little bit that round table. Otherwise, woo. So we're very lucky. And we found a great star from the Perimeter Institute, from the University of Waterloo. So there's probably a bit of something in the water in Waterloo. We talk a lot about water these days in Quebec, not for the good reason, because of lead in the water. But I think probably in Waterloo it's a bit different. So you have Broderick was a clear choice to be a member of the panel. You probably have all seen the picture that he was associated with, the discovery he made, and the picture of the black hole, which is amazing. And again, the beauty of science. So thanks a lot for all what you did over the past few years, Avery, as a member of that institute in Waterloo. And finally, Janet Halliwell, chair of the board of CSPC. Seemed to me that I have known Janet, that we have known each other past century, past millennium. Probably among the first time that we met when she was involved with the transformation from the Medical Research Council of Canada to the Canadian Institute of Health Research. And I've seen her in so many different roles over the past 20 years, wearing all kinds of different hats. Just amazing. So when I saw her earlier this week, I asked her her secret, and basically the statement was, well, just tell the crowd that I miss my retirement. Because she's still extremely active, dynamic, and working on many different committees. And their contribution to the CSPC, I'm sure, have been tremendous. Also, the help over the year to this organization has been outstanding. So, bonne discussion aux panélistes, et je vous invite à vous joindre sur le panel, sur le stage.
How does it work? Go to the end. I go to the end. I don't know. She says, I go to the end, I go to the end. Very good with instructions. All right.
Ah, yes, we have a light. It's very bright in the eyes. Well, colleagues, friends, honored guests, it's a delight to have this opportunity to have what I hope will be a very informal, interactive discussion with our very accomplished guests, and accomplished in different ways. I mean, you obviously have each had a very different sort of career and contribution to the world, which hopefully will still continue. What I'd like to do this evening is just pose a few questions to our guests, and to use Remy's term, maybe we could let them free associate somewhat. I have suggested that they should not hesitate to interact and won't cut each other off, but perhaps compliment, comment. Yes, Donna. So let's just get started. And this is really an opportunity to talk about science. And when I say science, I mean all spheres of intellectual activity. That includes engineering. And excellence, communication with the general public, all sorts of domains of activity that link to science. We're not talking as much policy tonight, maybe a little bit, but more science. So let's start with just a short discussion of Canadian excellence. And Avery, we're going to take you as an adopted Canadian. So we've had a really incredible year and a half, say 18 months, in which we've seen some phenomenal things that are associated with each of our guests here. The Nobel Prize that recognized the impact of your work, Donna, on the chirped pulse amplification, which led to the development of the whole field of high-intensity, ultra-short pulses of light beams. You transformed that. And Avery, you were involved in the Event Horizon team observations, doing some of the theoretical underpinnings. And of course, the black hole discovery was everywhere and still continues to be news. And then, of course, the events of the past, several months that must have resonated very strongly with you, Your Excellency. The mission that David Saint-Jacques was on and the extraordinary visibility of Canada at that point. So what I'd like you to talk about is just from each of you, your thoughts on the importance of these accomplishments, importance to Canada and to Canada's positioning in the world. So why don't I start with you, Donna?
Me? Okay.
This is not rehearsed.
Oh, okay, so it's the Nobel Prize. So what has that done for Canada? That's what you're saying? So there's a few things. One, Ivan, I don't know if he's still here from the Globe and Mail, he talked about when I was at McMaster, which is my alma mater, and they said that there was a Donna Effect because more people than ever have applied to go into engineering physics there, and I think they had twice as many women this year apply to engineering physics there. I mean, it's a little bit scary. Do they think, if we just do exactly what Donna does, somehow life just works out great? Hopefully it just all does. On the other side, I think I was in Korea in the summer, and I guess somebody's here from South Korea, and what I'm going to tell you was in front of their press, so I don't think I'm saying anything that they aren't talking about, but Korea is one of the countries that I hold up as a great example of how science can really help the economy of a country, right? That over 50 years, they've just decided that they should put their eggs in the basket of science, and we're all on our Samsung phones and using LG appliances, driving Hyundais. And so I've held them up as an example, but during this press conference, they said, but Donna, can you tell us how to win a Nobel Prize? And I said, isn't it more important that you've helped the economy than to win a Nobel Prize? But it was from the National Academy of Science, so I think they just thought it was more important to win a Nobel Prize. So I guess I helped Canada get one more Nobel Prize, so I guess if that's a good thing, then that's what I did.
And you put basic science even further on the roadmap.
I hope so, and yet it's a funny thing because, of course, what I did was build a laser. And building a laser is not pure science, but what I was trying to do was pure science, and so I needed a laser. And then once I had that laser, it changed the science of how light interacts with matter, so it changed the pure science again. And so I think it's always an evolving thing that you can't have one without the other, and that one shouldn't be left aside, is that you constantly have to have the pure science, but you always need new tools to go along with it, so it works hand in hand.
So Avery, you next.
Right, so one thing I think worth noting, so Donna winning the Nobel Prize is extraordinary, and I'm very proud to be at an institution with the Nobel laureate, but more importantly, with a colleague as excellent as Donna is.
Thank you.
Of course, Art MacDonald, who just down the 401, which is much longer than it may seem some days, won a Nobel Prize a couple of years before.
2015.
2015, right? So also Canadian. And I think this just highlights, along with the Event Horizon Telescope project and contributions, the incredible contribution that Canada makes. Despite being 0.5% of the population of the world, we are a shining beacon of scientific excellence across the world. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because people make decisions about what to support, what to invest in. And those decisions are more important, I think, now than ever, And things like the Event Horizon Telescope image are just a culmination of having made those, right? It's an example of what can be accomplished when you have a very diverse group of people, diverse both globally. We have members in our collaboration across the world, but also culturally. We have engineers, astronomers, physicists, and then people like me, theoretical physicists, who are sometimes a different species. All coming together, working together towards one extraordinary goal, and in some sense that's also, I think, a shining example of Canadian culture. So as an American in Canada, I think I've always felt very welcomed, and I felt that we're in this very pluralistic society and very supportive society. And this is the EHT is just an example of what can be accomplished in that sort of environment.
Your Excellency, you have the floor.
I'll have my phone. Can I have my phone, please? It's very important. I have my phone. No, thank you very much.
Aha.
Before I talk about the accomplishment of my colleague in space, I would like to tell you that, and I think it's going to resonate here in this crowd in particular, how important these facts. Yeah, we celebrate artists, we celebrate musicians, we celebrate actors, we celebrate rock stars, and we sometimes just within forget to celebrate this extraordinary achievement that people do with their brains and with their innovative spirit. So I cannot tell you, when Art McDonald was announced on the radio in Montreal in 2015, in the morning, my young son was next to me because he would come and spend 5 minutes with me just before the day would start. And then I hear on the radio, Bruce McDonald a gagné le prix Nobel. And then I jumped because Arthur Bruce McDonald had won the Nobel Prize, but nobody knew him as Bruce, right?
That's right.
So I jumped on the bed and I just started like going up and down. It's art. Finally, because I've been on NSERC for 9 years, when we were making sure that there were money for the Snow Lab, I was just so proud of art. And so proud of being Canadian, and so proud that we have this extraordinary power here to be competing at the highest level and at every level. And then came your announcement, Donna. Well, if I had been jumping on my bed because of art, you can imagine that when I heard about you, I'm just like, I can't believe it. This is so cool. Just because it is the kind of thing that has to be in the front of a newspaper and has to be celebrated. And then came that picture.
Come on.
Science is not something that we don't have around us. Science is describing everyday life and how we're made up and how that matter moves basically through space and time. It's all our business, and part of what the Center for Science Policy does is to convince people that it's all part of our world. So I'm very humble, but huge disclaimer: I am no physicist. Not a physicist. I'm not a physicist. So I'm in great company, but I am a space traveler and a spacecraft operator, and I was very proud this year of many firsts. First, I don't know how many of you know that the International Space Station has been in space now for 19 years. So next year we're going to celebrate 20 years of constant and continued human presence in lower Earth orbit. And many of the people who have been on board have been Canadians because we are an important partner. Without the Canadarm, which is the robotic arm on station right now, the Canadarm2, and without the Space Shuttle Canadarm, we wouldn't have been able to build the International Space Station, and we wouldn't have earned our place within those great nations. Which brings me to big science. In my current job, I have often the chance, the privilege to represent Canada abroad. And what science does is that there's a lot of underlying networks which can and should be used extensively because they already exist. Scientists know other scientists, astronauts know other astronauts from other countries, and the borders kind of like are not so important because you're much more interested in the research they do than where they come from and what language they speak at home. And whenever we can be participant, fully integrated, and contributors, respected, and privileged, but also celebrated. It is very important. And that's what happened this year. David Saint-Jacques flew a 6-month mission in space for Canada, did extremely well, even did a spacewalk that was not supposed to happen and was ready and trained for it. But he's representing us on this extraordinary endeavor. What I believe, we will not remember in 100 and 200 years from now. We will remember your name, Donna, but we will not necessarily remember the names of astronauts who have served on the International Space Station. But I'm pretty convinced that we will remember the International Space Station as being the first time where many nations, some of whom did not necessarily get along some years ago, decided to put resources and time and heart and brains together to build the first scientific basic research outpost in low Earth orbit. And to this day, it doesn't make the front page of the newspaper very often because we actually up there get along. So I think it's a cool thing about big science.
You know, what this discussion reminds me of is just the importance of individuals and how important specific people can be in the evolution of a domain of activity or the profile of a country. I was actually working in the back rooms to try to get the original funding for SNOW through back in the late 80s. And I can still remember Art MacDonald returning from Princeton to Canada, because he was Canadian, but returning from Princeton and, a leader who can actually take this forward. So I think leadership and individuals make such a difference, and role models as well. So that's something which I think we obviously should celebrate. So we've talked a little bit about our leadership and this whole question of showcasing it globally. Are there any other comments you wanted to make on that sort of global showcasing? I think what you've said, Your Excellency, is that you have an opportunity to do that yourself in your travels. How should we showcase it? Are there other opportunities for us to showcase it even more than we do? Canadians tend to hide their light under a bushel sometimes. Mm-hmm. So,
which is interesting because whenever I give a presentation about space and I show pictures of what the Earth looks like and the space station and how we did construction mission, because that's what I was part of, and then I show a picture of the Canadarm, whether it's the shuttle one or the station one, and then I say, this is the one time when Canada, we got it right in terms of saying, yes, we're here. Because most of the time we don't put ourselves forward, right? And we're kind of humble, and we don't want to take the room. But on the Canadarm, we didn't write our name once. We wrote it 4 times on every single side so that people would see Canada with the flag in every pictures that NASA would do, and that was a good coup. So bravo. I think we have to be a little sometimes tapping ourselves on the back and saying, good job, but also not be afraid of the extraordinary talent in here and our ability also to collaborate and to be team players. I think that is a strength that you find everywhere, that you probably saw during this conference again. we're a group of people that really like other people. And you know, we shouldn't be ashamed of that. And our ability to fit in to teams is something that we should be very proud of. I think, Avery, I spent more time in the US than you have, even though you're American, because I spent 17 years as an astronaut in Houston, Texas. And we still see that today. We have Canadian astronauts embedded into the NASA Corps, and they make an extraordinary contribution. And it's almost a seamless one, except for that little accent in the back of my mind. So it's important to, let's be proud of our accomplishment now and then. Celebrate that. Donna?
Maybe part of that is also engagement. I know that I feel a responsibility, and I think more people who do science maybe should get out there and get in front of the public at large and remind them why we do what we do. And there's a lot of different reasons, right? So you know, one of the reasons why I do what I do is just a deep sense of adventure, a desire to discover new lands, new places, and I think that runs through the hearts of many people. I don't think that's unique to me, and it's certainly not unique to any one group. It's part of what it means to be human, a desire to see what's over the next hill. I just do it with telescopes and on computers. Your Excellency, you do that by riding large bombs up into space.
Control bomb.
That is an important distinction, right? But it's a similar drive, and so there's a clear connection between what we do in science and I think the human story. That's one of the reasons why some of what we do resonates. But there's also real benefits that we can articulate, and I think Donna, you did an excellent job describing some of these. The economy of South Korea, that there are benefits far beyond bringing home prizes and recognition, but actually making our modern way of life possible. And the more that we articulate that in front of people and make sure that there is a red maple leaf somewhere, then the more we represent, I think, our wonderful institutions and our country.
And Donna.
Yes. I have to say, first of all, I wore red and white to the Swedish ceremony.
Beautiful.
I also used the leaves. I know Ferritin is here somewhere, the president of the University of Waterloo, and I wanted to make the Canadian flag, and it had big red sleeves, and I made the two men put their white shirts next to me, and we made the flag. And then I realized that the two I chose, though, were the president of the University of Waterloo and the president of the University of Rochester. So afterwards I went, I made an American make the Canadian flag. But he put it on the University of Rochester website, so he was fine.
This is a good idea.
So a lot of people, more people around the world and even in Canada want to talk about me being the third woman, but I always like to point out that I was the fifth Canadian, and I couldn't believe that just in 1 year, the sixth Canadian has already won in physics with James Peebles, so he's our latest, and And I'm also happy to say that I didn't understand this, but if you are a dual citizen, the Nobel people ask you to choose which country is representing you, because then they get invited, and he has chosen Canada as his country to be represented in Sweden.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So yes, I think Canada has a lot to be proud of on the world stage these days, and we do have to get out there, and we do have to celebrate it. Coming back to the woman thing, though, I just want to say that one of the few things I know, because I have to a little bit. But it comes into about Canadian pride and the fact that we are a little bit maybe quieter. And there's a lot of discussion about why maybe women don't do physics. And one of the ones that resonated with me the most, I will say, is that a colleague of mine said, look, physicists don't get paid well. It's not what society, giving us to be that. He goes, what do we get? We get to go to conferences and beat ourselves on the chest and say, look what we did, look what I did, look what I did. Because, and men are taught to like to do that. and women are not taught to like to do that. So if that's the only thing you get out of being a physicist, this is why we have to start teaching Canadian women to say, yay, look what I did, look what I did.
Okay.
But don't you think, though, that, and I would put out the question to everyone here. Imagine, I mean, all of us somewhere in our youth, for those of you that are young, that's not very far away, you got inspired. Something crossed your mind and you say, oh, this is what I'd like to do, or this is what inspires me, this is what makes me get up in the morning. Me, it was to watch the Apollo astronauts land on the moon. I didn't realize then I had absolutely zero in common with them, and that was completely ludicrous to think that I could follow in their footstep, but still it inspired me. But imagine there's something happen to make you passionate about what you do. We should all, every single one of us, once a year, for 1 hour, you do this more, but for those of you who have never done it, go to a school, your school or your children's school or somewhere else, and go and speak about why you're passionate about what you do. And if it has to be with science, well, it'll just be ordinary, because it won't be extraordinary that science is like. It will be normal, and you'll never know. There will be someone somewhere that will produce a spark because of what you said.
And continuing in the same vein, I mean, in this room we've got 600 people who are true believers in science, no question at all. But it's in people who believe in sort of the pursuit of the unattainable. But at the same time, and this is sort of question that keeps me awake at night, is whether there's a disconnect between our great belief in science and the general population. And you see this, of course, in some of the discussions around anti-vaccines and the issues around, do we really believe in climate change, et cetera, in the public discourse. So is there a disconnect here? Does this get in the way of our investment in science? And I call it an investment more than funding. It's an investment. Think, what more should we be doing to really communicate that excitement of, seeking exoplanets or probing matter, looking at some of the really interesting frontiers of genomics. So what more should we be doing to try to bridge that potential disconnect between the believers in science and those who have what could be, I guess I could be very blunt and say, an unhealthy skepticism?
Donna, you want to take that one?
I'm going to take this one. First of all, I think we already talked about it, that science should never be a belief. Science is fact, and science is data, and science is what we know to this day. That doesn't mean that we won't know something different and a different direction later, but to the best of humans' knowledge, this is what we know. So it shouldn't be a belief. Religion can be a belief. I heard something earlier today, and it was a daughter of an anti-vaccinator, so I don't know if she's here or not, but something she said really resonated with me, in that she said, we mostly react because of our emotions, not of our intellect. And so I am cognizant of this. It's not enough just to go and talk about the excitement of science. Somewhere along the line, we are people that are educated, doesn't even have to be science, but educated, are becoming part of this elite that are supposedly almost the bad people as we go forward. And I had the opportunity in 2015, it was the International Year of Light, and I was at a worldwide opening of the International Year. And when we picked the year that it should be 2015, it was a very Western perspective. And people from the Middle East said they wouldn't sign on because we did not take account of the fact that there was a scientist in the Middle East, and I'm going to butcher his name, but Ibn al-Huthain, 1,000 years ago, in the golden age of Islam, who already came up with the camera obscura that no one in Europe used for art until about 400 years ago. So, and I just started to think then about this golden age of Islam, and the West was in the Dark Ages, right? And then we've been sort of resting here in the West about how great the United States has sort of led us in this whole, you know, we're onto this new Enlightenment era. And I started to wonder what happened that the Islamic world let go of the fact that they were the leaders of art and let go that they were the leaders of science. And I just feel like we're on the same slippery slope, that somehow it's not enough even just to encourage people to do science because it helps the economy, or, you know, it's a high-tech world and we're going to all need to know science better. I'm also just a little bit worried that we're becoming actually the people to not be believed anymore, and that as an elite group, they're all skeptical of us, and I think that's a big danger coming forward.
Avery.
Well, so to maybe to paraphrase your last point is it is possible for societies to walk back. That progress is not assured.
Exactly.
And this was struck me just a few days ago. I was talking to somebody about what movies they enjoyed, and their favorite movie was 2001. And I remember watching 2001 thinking, wow, such fantasy.
I didn't understand it.
Right.
I didn't either.
Well, aside from all of the metaphysics, this fantasy, we have a permanent orbital space station. We have a moon base. We're sending manned missions in very large ships out to Jupiter. What lunatic would imagine such a thing? And then you realize that Arthur C. Clarke was writing this in light of the Apollo landings, which followed the Wright brothers by just over half a century. And surely in another half century, with an accelerating pace of change, we would be colonizing the inner solar system. Right? And yet, for all the reasons that I think we all understand, that didn't actually come to pass on that timescale. Hopefully it will eventually, but societies can walk back. We should be careful not to allow that to happen. How do we bridge the divide? So as a member of a large collaboration, I've become a believer in better everything through better communication. Okay, and what would I want to communicate to people? I want to communicate to them that science is not a book of facts. It's a process, and also, in fact, it's a highly unsatisfying and painful process. Which also explains why people, I think, misapprehend physicists, especially theoretical physicists, as being arrogant. It's not that we're arrogant. We're just so desperately happy when something works, and unwilling to let it go. And so, you know, I spend my time supervising students, exhorting them to kill their intellectual children. That is, they have this beautiful idea. It's wonderful. It seems like such a great idea. And if only it's true, maybe one day they could be a future Donna and win a Nobel Prize. Of course, it's wrong. Because almost every idea we have is wrong. Okay? And so I say, go find out why it's wrong as fast as you can. Go kill your beautiful little idea as fast as you can. Because the faster you can stop following the wrong idea, the sooner you can get on to working on the right idea. And those people who are very successful in science are extraordinarily creative because they're constantly coming up with ideas, figuring out why they're wrong, and then one of them's right, and then they want to tell everyone about it, and then everyone says, look at that arrogant prick. Okay, but that's, okay? But it's also a process that you daren't apply to your personal relationships, because if you treat anyone else as critically as you need to treat your own ideas, then you will be lonely. But this, it's also not a human endeavor. That's, I think, what we really train our students to do, is to engage in this hyper degree of self-criticism in a compartmentalized way. We don't want them to all develop depression, but in this very compartmentalized way. And some piece of that is what I would like to communicate. Because with that comes humility.
Yes.
And a little bit of trust in those things which are, as improbable as it may seem, seem to work extraordinarily well, well enough to put people on the moon.
Now, that's interesting because I come to this from a completely different angle, which probably shows that we're all the same, really, is the fact that actually I think we forget what we are when we're young, very, very young. For all of you who have been observing children, children are natural skeptics. Yes, they ask why. They ask, why is the sun yellow? And then we tell them, and they say, well, why is the light traveling? And why? So they're asking the basic of the questions, which fuels us into anything that we do. But children are also avid, curious people. If you put a baby down and there's a door open in that room, that's where the baby's going, even on 4 feet, because curiosity is an inherent characteristic of humans, I guess. But also they're very good destroyers as well, and that's the basic of engineering. They are vivid dreamers. And as we age, we tend to be more cautious, we tend to be more, well, no, of course, yeah, we're not gonna go there. I can't dream to be a Nobel Prize physics winner because that's not in my reach. Well, perhaps not. But perhaps that's what needs to be communicated, is anything is good and the sky is not the limit. I vouch for that.
So, on to this question of we invest in these frontiers, in pursuit of the frontiers. And physics and space science in particular, we have, they're often very costly investments in infrastructure. And we've done I think some great things with Snow Lab, CHIME, the radio telescope that's done the fast FRBs, the fast bursts. The Canadian Light Source Perimeter is another investment we've made. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on how those investments have changed our landscape, because it's really only since in the last few years, I say last few years, that dates me, doesn't it? The 1980s.
Some of you alive?
When we've really made the significant investments over and above the traditional field of astronomy, where we've actually been strong in Canada for many years. So how have those investments changed our research landscape? Comments, questions, reactions, reflections?
I think many people here in the room know Max Blaud, who was Chancellor of Wilfrid Laurier University. He was heading a panel of experts for the Canadian academies to figure out how Canada should position itself to compete in the global innovation economy. And he wrote an op-ed just a few months ago. And in there, he was stating that currently, well, from 2018, I guess, Canada had 4% of all the citations research papers globally in the world, though we only represent 2% of the GDP of the world, and we represent 0.5% of the population, which basically says that we are hitting above average and above our weight. And that is due to many factors and granting councils, investments, institutions, education. It starts at the lowest level and it goes to the highest. And it's this entire infrastructure. And then comes the policy makers and the decision makers who are so important in all this process. Sometimes, people say that physics is the study of matter and how it moves through space and time. Well, I think that science policy is the study of making good decisions and using that to move through space and time. It's all those building blocks that need to work together, and we're a society of knowledge, and we need to always continue in that sense.
And working together is interesting because perimeter is an exercise in just creating an intellectual space. So how do you see that as having influenced the research environment, Avery?
So I think one thing it does is it brings, so personal company accepted, excellent people to Canada, right, is a key recruitment tool, but not just to the Perimeter Institute itself, but people like myself who are, have 1 foot in the university, the University of Waterloo, 1 foot in the Perimeter Institute. We have many such people, many associate faculty across Southern Ontario and across Canada generally. And so it provides a way to bring in excellent, smart, motivated people, network them together, bring world-class science to Canada. And then those people create what we call high-quality personnel. It's a very HQP, very dry term. Not quite sure how that came to be, actually. Maybe somebody in this room could explain to me. But bright young people who then enter our economy and are innovators and problem solvers who make our society, make our world what it is around us. And so places like Perimeter specifically, University of Waterloo, I also feel, if I had to choose one word to describe it, it's entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. It's been very excellent at playing this a very similar game. Don't just bring in individuals and don't just elevate themselves, but create the leavening for our communities.
Now, I see that I've been given a time signal and I couldn't quite read it, but with lights in the eye, but that's okay because we want to give the last word to you, Donna.
Oh, do we?
But I was just going to add also, because in my enumeration of what I think also can really is absolutely paramount, and we have several examples here in the room, is what I call sound scientific advice to bridge the gap. Where we think science is just only for those who do it. It is not true. It's for everybody, and it influences so many decisions. The sound scientific advice and the use of scientific information in helping making better decision is exemplified in this room because we have several scientific advisors. We need more of that everywhere, I think.
So Donna, you don't do big physics, but you do small physics.
I do small physics, yes.
And so the research environment that you experience, that is what's important.
Well, but even, so I think what we want to do in Canada, if you can look at what made Silicon Valley such a dynamic place in so many ways, it was because people invested in universities like Stanford and Berkeley, although it's a state school, but Stanford drew a lot of money there, but they also welcomed the world, right? And I think if we play these big science games, and science is an international thing, we want to say we are open for business for science. We want to welcome the top talent. And if you're going to try to attract the top talent, you must put out some big projects there. And the more we welcome people from the world, hopefully we can be successful.